Visibility team, and of course, all of you phenomenal women. Thank you so much for having me today. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and I want to start by saying that my story is complex. It is heavy and at times difficult to understand, but I would not change a single thing that's happened in my story, in my journey. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, because everything that's happened has given me the courage, the fortitude, the perseverance to live this life. And I hope at the end of this, you are left with a sense of hope. Hope to make it past your deepest fears and pain, hope to accomplish your wildest dreams, and hope to be bold and to be courageous with your life. But let me tell you about where my story begins. I was born in Nanjing, China, which is a city of about 8 million people just northwest of Shanghai. When I was a young baby, I was involved in a fire and left on the streets of Nanjing with burns and a missing right limb. Shortly after that, at about a year and a half old, I was found on the streets and taken to a local government orphanage in Nanjing. And for the next 7 years, I lived my childhood here, enduring child labor, physical abuse, and malnourishment. Every day, we lived these incredibly isolating lives where we were never allowed to leave the premises of this orphanage. I had no access to media, books, television, radio, no communication with the world beyond the four walls that we lived in. So as you can imagine, I grew up thinking that the way that I was raised in this orphanage was how all children are raised, that this was normal. I had no idea that outside of this place was a very different life and world. And so I didn't think anything was wrong with how we grew up. And I will say, I talk a lot about hope, but at that chapter of my life, I had absolutely no hope. In fact, the main goal for me every day was just to survive, to make it through. And I can look back and wonder how I even made it through. But really, I think it was this innate ability, this will to continue to push, to survive. And it served me so well in my life today. But I got a miracle. When I was 7 years old, I was adopted by a couple from northern Michigan and brought here to America. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this place that I grew up in. Most people assume, oh, you were rescued, you were adopted, taken out of this dark, oppressive place and brought to America, the greatest country in the world. You must have been thrilled and excited. And I can tell you with honesty that I did not feel any of that. There was not an ounce of excitement, of joy to be leaving, because this orphanage, the other children, they were my home, they were my family. That was the only world I'd ever known. And to be ripped out of that place one day, overnight, to be taken away by people that I had never seen before. So prior to leaving the orphanage, I had never seen Caucasian people. I had never seen people that were not Chinese. And I remember my parents, taking my brother and I from this orphanage and wondering if we were even of the same species as me, and just being absolutely terrified, sick to my stomach to be leaving a place that was home to me, and to come to America, be plopped in a town of 1,600 people, predominantly Caucasian, and oh, by the way, nobody else has a disability like me. And so as you can imagine, this is a very difficult, rocky chapter, a lot of navigating the culture, and I will admit the acculturation process of adjusting to life here in America was really rough. I weighed 22 pounds and I did not speak a word of English. So Also some struggles here. You don't look like everybody else, you don't speak the same language, difficult to communicate, to make friends, to socialize. But one thing that really had a huge impact and helped me to adjust to life here was sports. I'm 10 years old, and I remember the kids at school talking about youth soccer and softball, and I went home and told my parents, I want to do that. Now, keep in mind, I do not come from an athletic family. Neither of my parents played sports. I would venture to say no one really even has an athletic gene or DNA in them. And I actually didn't even know what any of these sports were, but I remember the kids being so excited and having so much fun and telling my parents, I want to sign up. So we signed up, and I found out I was always welcome to be there. I could show up to soccer, softball, basketball, whatever sport you name it, I could be there. But when it came to the games and the tournaments, I was not often included. I was the girl that sat on the bench, stood on the sidelines. Everybody else got to play except for Youth Scout. And I can remember thinking, this is another moment of belonging. Here I am told again, you don't belong. You're not like everybody else. And did I want to quit? Absolutely. But perhaps it's just the stubborn part of who I am. I did not quit. Every season of every year, I signed up for a sport. And so many people ask, why? Why did you do that when you weren't wanted there? People didn't want to include you. They let you know that you did not belong. And I think back on what it was. I think for me, it was the idea that I didn't want somebody to have that power to tell me where I belonged and where I didn't, where I could be or where I couldn't. And I knew that if I quit, the coaches, the other athletes, the other kids at school would have gotten their way. The girl they didn't really want there would have just left. They would have never had to deal with me or to see me there. And I was not about to let them have that victory. So I continued to sign up. And I say that and tell you that story because it's been so consistent in my life of the idea that even when you don't belong, even when nobody else wants you there, it's important to show up because the rewards and the seeds that it plants later in life are so vital. But the real breakthrough in sports came when I was 14 years old. I got a running prosthetic from the Challenge Athletes Foundation, which provides adaptive sports equipment to athletes that would otherwise not be able to afford it. And what people don't understand is that sports equipment such as running prosthetics are as costly as a car, yet insurance companies do not cover them because they see adaptive sports equipment, sports prosthetics as everyday luxury items. Now, when I first started running, I didn't know anything even about sports prosthetics. I did sports on my everyday walking leg, and I didn't know anything about the adaptive sports world. I didn't even know there was a Paralympics. I just signed up to run. My prosthetist who made my legs told me about these running prosthetics, and he said, I think you can run. So at 14 years old, I got this grant from the Challenge Athletes Foundation, and it changed my whole life. I went from somebody who was super insecure, lacking confidence, to a young girl who had a hope that I would be something one day, that I would do something important and valuable. I just didn't know what that was going to be. So let me tell you about the first time that I ran. I'm 14 years old. I just gotten this running prosthetic, and my prosthetist in Orlando, Florida, had signed me up for this Paralympic style competition. Keep in mind, I'm a small town girl from the Midwest, northern Michigan. I've never heard of the Paralympics. I've never even seen another amputee run before. So I get to this competition at Disney's Wide World of Sports, and I'm signed up for the 60 meters and the 100 meters, and wearing shorts and a little sports bra tank top. and I have the meltdown of all meltdowns. The whole ugly girl cry, snot running down. I am having such a bad meltdown that I can't get a word out of what I'm trying to say. What's wrong, sir? I just don't want to be here. And what I was so upset about, what led to this meltdown, wasn't really running. I could do that. I practiced it, not very long, but obviously I knew I was able to put on a prosthetic and run. What I was most afraid of was that up until that point in my life, I had always worn a cosmetic cover over my prosthetic. And I don't know, possibly you've never seen one, but it's foam, skin tone. I would venture to say it's not even, it looks nothing like an anatomical limb, but that was sort of my safety blanket, my security of having this prosthetic covered. And I grew up wearing that cover and long pants, long dresses, and as often as I could, I had that hidden. And so you can imagine this carbon fiber, C-shaped blade. There's nothing you can do to make it look like an anatomical limb. And here I am stepping out in front of an audience, fans in the stands, and realizing for the first time in my life, I have to be seen by these people with something that at the time I thought was so ugly. And I struggled to accept at that moment that I was going to be seen. And it was the idea of having to really wrestle with who I am, of being an amputee. And so my prosthetist said, well, we are not leaving this competition until you run this race. And of course, everybody's looking at me like, you've held up all of us. We're all mad at you because we can't go until she goes. And so I decided, all right, I'm going to just go out and do it. Another moment of just being bold, being brave, putting aside the fears, and going out and running. And in that moment, the most freeing, liberating experiences of my life occurred. And it's funny how in life we often worry about people's perceptions of us, what other people are going to think, of our own insecurities of being seen, that the world is going to see and know who we are. And yet, at that moment when I ran, I didn't think about any of those things. The feeling that I got of being able to do something that I had never done before, of all the chains being lifted that had held me down as a young girl, were gone. And after that race, I had the biggest smile on my face. I came in last place, but you would have never known by my reaction, by the joy that I had, because at that time, I vowed to myself that I would never be ashamed of my story, of what I look like, of where I come from, and most importantly, of the things that we cannot change about ourselves. And this was an important transformational moment in my life that really propelled me forward. And from there, I gained the confidence, the belief that I was going to do something. And so the success that I had in being able to run, of doing something that I'd never done before, translated to life outside of sport. I was not a particularly academic, great student before I ran, and just that belief and that confidence helped me to realize, all right, I gotta be serious about my studies. I never had any aspirations to go to college up until I ran, and that was the first time that I realized, okay, maybe I can go to college. And so I earned a full merit scholarship to UCLA. And even now, I'm not sure how it happened. Coming from such a small town, this was unheard of for where I come from, to earn a full academic scholarship to UCLA. A dream of mine to go to college and at such a premier university as UCLA. But I want you to know it wasn't an easy transition. So coming to Michigan, I thought, oh, what an adjustment, right? To come from China, to go to a small town. Well, UCLA was even a bigger adjustment. For the first time, I see people that resemble me so much more diversity, but I didn't know a single soul when I came to Los Angeles, and I felt like a fish out of the water here. And it was at this point that I had another struggle of really wrestling with an identity sort of crisis. You see, I was torn between, conflicted, stuck between these two worlds. I am ethnically not white enough to be and belong with the white kids at school, but culturally, I'm not Asian enough where I belong with the Asian students. And so I just really felt like I was kind of living this half this and half that life and identity, and really struggling with an acceptance of both, of the things that I cannot change. And so that first year I remember thinking, all right, I'm going to drop out, go back home, and go back to what is comfortable, what is safe. But I'm so thankful that in my sophomore year at UCLA, early in my sophomore year, I was contacted by the high performance director for US Paralympics, who presented an opportunity for me to be part of the Paralympics. Again, I still don't really know what the Paralympics is at this point. It's not televised. You didn't see athletes with disabilities in the Paralympics on TV or in ads. And so she told me that I could have an opportunity at that point to potentially compete at the London 2012 Games. For those that don't know, the Paralympics is like the Super Bowl for athletes with disabilities. It's where people with disabilities compete at the highest level in many different sports, but typically with some sort of adaptive equipment, such as a running prosthetic, a racing chair. And for me, as a girl who always wanted to be an elite athlete to compete with the best in the world, I so desperately wanted to be on that stage. So I said, yes, I'm all in. And at this point, I've finished college, and 2012 rolls around. I compete at the 2012 trials, and guess what? I came in last place in all my events. And not just by a little bit. Like, I got whooped at those trials. And I remember feeling so defeated. Another critical moment of, I'm not good enough, I don't belong. And what really sustained me and kept me going was I received so many notes from kids, from the parents, that told me, you know, that I was their child's role model and hero, and that, you know, they wanted to push me to keep going. And it was at this moment that I realized I had a great opportunity. I did not want to be that girl that had, you know, followed her dream, the career, the dream of her, the career of her dreams, and you know, competed at one Paralympic trials, didn't make it, and just quit, never to be seen again. I certainly didn't want to be that example to the young kids that I mentored, and it was really at this moment that I realized that I could be a role model, an inspiration to encourage these kids to follow their dreams, to not give up at the first, you know, face of defeat. And so I decided that I would continue. But of course, nobody's getting sponsored to do Paralympics at this time. Nobody's making any money to do it. I graduate from UCLA, and I realized I got to get a real job. And so I do what everybody else does. And I went and got a regular job working in marketing for a medical device company. It was a decent, well-paying job. But year 2 to 3 into the job, I realized I'm not living out my purpose and my calling. And so I decided this dream of the Paralympics had sort of eluded me. I continued to train even while I was working at this job, before work and after work. But I knew that in order to get to the Paralympics, if I didn't want to be sitting on my couch watching my friends compete, I had to go all in. And so this meant probably the most bold, brave, daring thing that I had done in my life up to that point. I moved myself down to San Diego. I had a coach who was willing to train me at the Olympic Training Center. And he said, I'll work with you. I'll get you to the Paralympics. but you just gotta find a place to live and a way to get here. And so I said, okay. I left this comfortable job that was decent paying, had full benefits, and I decided to give all of that up to move to San Diego, to live out of my car and on friends' couches and spare rooms. And I did this for 6 months. And I can tell you that I was terrified. I mean, obviously it's worked out and you know that, but at that time, there were regular tears, daily, nightly, fears of I've left something comfortable to go to something so uncomfortable, unknown, for no guarantees, living off of almost $25 a week at night, calculating, is this going to be enough for gas to get to practice? Can I live off of enough PB&Js and instant cup noodles to sustain myself during this time? And all of it did pay off. The fears, the worries. But I share that because so many of us struggle to go to those places where we don't want to suffer. We don't want to go to those low places in order to achieve a dream. And we're really uncomfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable, of the unknown, of not knowing what's next. And I want to encourage you today to go out and take that leap, to be bold, to be brave. Because if you're willing to go all in, if you're willing to make the sacrifices, if you're willing to put it all out there and say, I don't care what it takes, I don't care the lows that I gotta hit, I will do whatever it takes to achieve this goal, to achieve this dream, you're gonna get there. And within 6 months of working with this coach, I went from nowhere on the map, nobody knew who I was, to being top 5 in the world. And of course, getting some incredible partners that believed in me and supported my dream of making the Paralympics possible. But it did pay off because I lived out my dream of competing, of being a Paralympian and competing at the Rio Paralympic Games. I want to tell you a little bit about that experience. So here I am in Rio, overjoyed to be living this dream, and the night of the 100-meter finals rolls around. I've made it into the finals, and instead of being psyched and overjoyed and stoked to be there, we go on the longest walk around the track to the start line, and tears just start rolling down my face. They are not tears of sadness, but it was in that moment that I was able to stop, to reflect, and to think about my journey, to be a girl that was abandoned on the streets, had lost her leg in a fire, to grow up in this super small town where I was told that I didn't belong, not included on the sports teams, to living out this dream of the Paralympics. That just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen to people like me. And so it was such an emotional moment, and I will admit, I think the emotions got the best of my performance, but nonetheless, such a dream to be able to compete at the Paralympics amongst the best athletes in the world. So I stand before you today as a Paralympian, a proud Paralympian, a 7-time national champion, a world record holder, an American record holder. But that's not the thing I want you to know most about me. What I'm most passionate about is continuing to lift up, to inspire the next generation of athletes to have the same opportunities that I've had to live this dream, to not experience the barriers of being told no, that they don't belong, to have the access to the adaptive sports equipment. And I know so many of you incredible women are listening. You are businesswomen, you're leaders, and I hope some of this story resonates with possibly a struggle that you've had to overcome or are possibly currently facing. And I want you to know that even when you are told you don't belong, even when the odds are stacked against you, even if you have to give up every single thing for your goals, your dreams, to do it, to be bold, to be brave. Sometimes the most important thing you can do is to show up in places you don't belong, that you are told you're not wanted, that you're not good enough. And I hope that fuels you. I hope that motivates you to push, to keep going. And one of the most important things you can do is just to be there, to exist. And sometimes being ourselves in those places where we don't belong is the revolution in itself. As a young girl, I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. I wish somebody then had told me that I was enough, that my worth and my value are not attached to what I do, of my accomplishments, of any worldly thing, but really that my worth and my value is attached to my purpose and to my calling. And today I'm so proud to share with you my story of what I've overcome, and I hope that it provides some measure of hope. Hope to make it past your deepest fear and pain, hope to accomplish your wildest dreams, and hope to be bold and to be brave with your life. I want to finish before we get to the Q&A, with this baseball analogy. Baseball is my favorite sport, and it's that the season is long. There's 162 games of baseball in a season. It's long, there's ups, there's downs, but don't allow yourself to get too high or too low. Keep doing the work every single day, and before you know it, the results are going to be there. You're going to be where you want to be at the very end. So continue to push through. Know that you are enough, and believe in yourself. Don't give up, and continue to be bold and to be brave.
So I am here today joined by Scout Basset, and I am incredibly excited to invite you to this space and have this conversation, to hear your story. I'm incredibly welcomed and blessed to be able to take this interview of you.
Oh my gosh, it is such an honor for me to be here with you. You're such a trailblazer, such an inspiration, and just incredible role model. So I'm really excited to be here with you too.
So it's my honor, because being here with the Paralympian, there is so many incredible stories that have not yet been told, and I'm excited to hear those stories. Most importantly, I'd love to just dive and dig deep in to kind of really learn more from you with respect to, what makes you bold and brave to be able to tell these stories and reveal everything you've gone through.
For me, being bold and brave with my life means stepping into the unknown, outside of my comfort zone, being willing to take that risk, to go all in, to suffer even for your goals and for your dreams, and just pushing through. Every defeat, every loss, no matter what people say, just continuing to push through, to believe in yourself. And at the end of the day, you never want to feel or to wonder if you might have, could have, might have, should have been. And I don't live my life with that approach. And so I just always want to know that I went after it and gave it everything I had.
You going after it has been clear, and there has been some great things that have come from it. What would you say is one of your most defining, and I love that word that you used, your suffering, things that you've suffered through? What would you say is one thing that has really, been such an instrument in your life that you've suffered through that has turned you into who you are today?
So something really incredible happened after the Rio Paralympic Games. 5 days after I ran the 100 meters, I actually had an opportunity to go back to my homeland in China and to revisit the orphanage that I grew up in. And there is nothing in the world that could ever prepare someone for an experience like that. Going back to the place that had really broken me as a young girl. And I had an opportunity to go back, and what I realized from that experience is obviously super emotional, heart-wrenching, to sort of rip open that Band-Aid again and kind of live through all those really horrifying memories and experiences. But at the same time, what I realized in walking away is that I had suffered so much during those 7 years of living in this really dark and oppressive place, but that in many ways I had also been parked there. Mm-hmm. And I think so many of us don't realize in life that when we've gone through something really traumatic, or there's been pain or loss or grief of some sort, that we can easily be parked there forever, and we unconsciously are there and we stay there. And so what I realized from that experience of going back is that I had been parked at this place of loss, of pain, of trauma, and that I needed to get myself out of those places. And that it's a choice, right? It's all a choice. Do we want to stay there, or do we want to, there's this great line that your trauma is not your fault, but healing is your responsibility. And that is what I realized in going back to that orphanage. And I went through a 2-year process of deep therapy, even deep depression, and days that I did not know if I could get myself to the other side of it. Because you realize you have so much trauma that you've lived through, and there's moments where you think that you're going to be defined by those things, or that you're never going to be whole or complete. And it was a 2-year journey of this finding wholeness. And I can say now that I very much feel that way, and I've overcome and walked through that and done the healing and the work, but it was really difficult to go through that journey. And I see now why people struggle so much, because it's really difficult to face those things head on and to realize, like, I got to do the healing work. And that is the hardest job there is working on ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing, at least in the sports world, that, hasn't been fully addressed and is now coming to the top of dealing with, mental health and dealing with the stigma that used to be associated with, right? You guys are superheroes, you're athletes, we all look up towards you, and then we forget that component or that part, that there's more than just the shininess and the brightness and the highlights. You're also dealing with things. So how would you say that the athlete mindset helped you finally get to that place where you can address, those issues in your history?
I consider myself a warrior, unbreakable, and I've accomplished so much in my life, and to struggle to get out of bed, to wonder how I'm going to be whole again, I felt like I couldn't do that. And yet I was this, am this incredible athlete. And what I realized is that, A, it's okay not to be okay. And B, for as much stigma as there is about getting help, that it's necessary. I'm not a psychiatrist, and I'm not going to tell anybody how to, get through their or coping mechanisms, but I know for me, getting actual medical help, therapy help, doing a very dynamic approach. And I'm so thankful that I had people in my life that encouraged me to do that and said it's okay to do it, but also that, it's an act of bravery and of boldness to recognize in yourself that you've got to do that work, and you have to be willing to do the things that even I thought I would never do, in terms of seeking help and getting treatment. But thank goodness that I did, because it's no coincidence that when I got to the other side of that, enormous rewards came into my life, and blessings from doing that work.
And you are an inspiration to not just Paralympic athletes, you're an inspiration to all athletes and all people across. Having that platform, what are some of the things that you focus on, in addition to kind of mental health, but what are other things that you focus on that you would love to use your platform to open the doors for, or provide access or pathways for others that are trying to follow in your footsteps?
Well, first, I commend you, because you're doing the exact same things, and just really proud to see another strong woman being such a great advocate. But advocacy is a big part. I'm really passionate about getting more women in the Paralympics. Currently, we're barely at 40% participation of women athletes in the Paralympics. We have far fewer events and sports for women in the Paralympics. So on a mission to increase the numbers, because I have seen how sport has changed my life, but more importantly, how sport is so crucial for women. The numbers and the statistics are there that women that do sports are more likely to succeed, to get higher education, to be at the C-suite level of businesses. And so I see the benefits, not only physically, but long-term, mentally, and really, getting the adaptive sports equipment. That's such a huge barrier for people with disabilities in sports, especially women, but also changing the perception of how women with disabilities are portrayed in media, in entertainment. When even to this day, we see that people with disabilities in media and in entertainment, they're mostly male. And they're heralded as being warriors, heroes, celebrated for their honor and their bravery, and yet we don't portray women with disabilities as that. It's her deficiency, it's her imperfection, and we don't celebrate women with disabilities as being strong and confident and beautiful, flawed or not. And so hoping to be able to continue to change the narrative of how we see women with disabilities.
Yeah, and you hit that on a note where, I am a big believer that seeing is believing, right?
Yes,
There's
absolutely.
other little girls who are saying, Scout's doing it, I can do it too. And it took me a while to really get that and to understand until I had a little Hispanic boy and girl say, I didn't know Hispanic women could be attorneys. And I was like, whoa, like that was kind of my first thing. How do we create, and you hit on a couple notes, right, with regard to the adaptive technologies, right? How do we get that, what are some solutions that you've thought of that we could get that access to individuals? And I use the word access because, right, it's it can be a financial thing, it could be an education thing. What are different ways or solutions that you think could help assist with that?
Well, first, I think first of all, there are organizations out there, the Women's Sports Foundation, the Challenge Athletes Foundation in particular, that are helping athletes with disabilities get the very costly adaptive sports equipment, such as running prosthetics, racing chairs, training, funding, support. Adaptive sports equipment are not covered by insurance companies. And so yet they cost as much as sometimes a new car. And so CAF is so great in being able to provide that equipment. Obviously, it's how I got started. So supporting organizations like that is crucial. Pushing for more media coverage of these athletes, coverage of their events, of the Paralympic Games, of World Championships. For people that have never watched the Paralympics, I really think that it is not only moving, inspiring, beyond that, it's a great educational opportunity for people to learn about the Paralympics, to sit down with their children, their families, and to have those conversations of what it's like to see somebody do something with a piece of equipment or do sports in a different way than they've traditionally seen it. And they're great conversation starters. So I think we've got to continue to push for more coverage of that. While this last cycle was really great, we saw an increased coverage of the Paralympic Games. It's not anywhere close to what we see on the Olympic coverage or able-bodied sports. And so that's a big part. But also, I think if you work with or you lead a company, a brand, an organization to support these athletes, that's a huge issue, is that currently very few Paralympic athletes have any sort of support. And we know that in order to do this, you've got to have, those sponsorship support or people that really believe you, that can help elevate you, lift you up to have more visibility. So those are really, important things that I think we need to see more people doing.
And I think I know the answer to this, but you can definitely confirm this, is that there's not many that are sitting in these roles of leadership that are women and or those who have had that experience being a Paralympic athlete or exposure to that. Like, is that something that we could, I think I know what the answer is, but is that something that we could increase and we can grow so that those opportunities are opened up, or at least they're thinking about it differently?
Absolutely. One of my favorite quotes from Melinda Gates' book is, the single greatest investment humanity can make is in women, lifting up women. And everything comes from there. If you lift up women, you can change communities, you can change the world. And I truly believe in that, investing in women, betting on women. And the issue that we're having, whether it's in Paralympics, whether it's in sports, is we don't see enough women at those leadership positions in coaching, on governing boards, leading these organizations. And when we don't see that, it's hard to make change. It's hard to see investment dollars in these women athletes. And so until I think we see more of that, until women are in those positions to be able to make those decisions for change, to write those checks, we're not going to see the kind of growth that we need to. And so, but I think it's happening, and I think it will happen. I'm super excited. I've joined the LA 28 Athletes Commission with that intention of, by LA 28, I want to see more women athletes at the Paralympics. I want to see more sports at those games for women. So we've got to just continue to speak up, to speak out, to use the opportunities as you've done, whether it's on TV or on your Twitter or social, to continue to talk about that.
And I think you kind of, it has been opening up, and it's been great. And I always, it's unfortunate, but to be a woman in sport, it's never been a right, but it's been a fight to be able to get into those roles. But like, as you mentioned, it's been opening up, and we've had some great allies, men who have decided not to just, hey, that'll be great on TV, but have actually put us into the C-suite level, into those decision-making levels. And I think it's only going to grow from there. And I know you did some broadcasting for the Paralympics that just occurred. How was that experience, and how did that platform show you a different perspective of the game?
Well, I'm quite a novice compared to your broadcasting skills and experiences, but it was incredible and terrifying. I would say one of the most terrifying experiences of my life. It's funny because as an athlete, you train to do that every single day, but I don't train to be a broadcaster every day or to be on TV. And I think people are not aware of how difficult it is to commentate, to do it in a way that is intellectual, that gives really good insight. One of the challenges of covering the Paralympics is you have to explain to the viewer what they're seeing, right? And while the visual is helpful, to see the event, explaining how the prosthetics work, explaining how a certain impairment, having an arm impairment and a leg impairment, is going to impact the event that they do. Educating the audience is such a crucial part. Language is such a crucial part of the Paralympics. And so, talking with your friends, as you know, sports is quite different than talking about sports or analyzing it on TV. And, it took me a few days, but by the end of it, I loved it. The experience was incredible. I learned so much from it. And it's definitely something I could be interested in after I'm done with running.
Yeah, no, definitely. We still want you to keep on running. You inspire us all with what you do. And I do love where you had said, we need to be watching the Paralympics because we would put that on. Sadly enough, I watched that more than I did the Olympics, but mine was the reverse in my house. And my 6-year-old asked me, why is that person running without a leg, or what's going on? And it opened those conversations for me to have with my 6-year-old. And I was saying, Quinn, that's more impressive than someone with 2 legs. I'm like, she's like, you're right. I can't even do that, right? And so it did, and it opens up the eyes of the next generation for her to not see that it's a handicap, or it's, especially when she saw women Paralympic athletes doing it. And I loved that because she didn't see it as a disability. She thought they were all superheroes because they were overcoming basics. And it was just a great conversation to have. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. They'd always say that about women's sports in general. No one wants to watch women's sports. And I'm like, of course, because you don't put it on TV, so no one can logistically and practically ever watch it.
And we had a really interesting thing that happened really during the NBC coverage of the Paralympics. Halfway through the Paralympic program, they saw viewership was at historic record levels, right? And they decided halfway through the 2 weeks, we're going to cover more events and more sports on the back, 2 weeks, because the first week was so incredible. And so the idea that people aren't going to watch, no one's interested, there isn't an audience, we really dispelled that in the first week because they had record viewership. And so I truly believe, hopefully next go around, and as we get to LA 28 and we host really our first summer Paralympic Games in the US, that people, that it will be on the main network. It's not going to be on a secondary network that doesn't get a lot of eyeballs, but hopefully it will be on the main network, and And we're going to be able to show people that there is an audience. Because one thing that I think that is really unique about the Paralympics, when people say, well, what's the difference between the Paralympics and the Olympics, and other than the obvious, right, of the disability factor, I always say, well, the Olympics is a display of what the human body can achieve and do. But the Paralympics is a demonstration of what the human heart is capable of achieving. And I think that that's really incredible when you watch the Paralympics, because everybody, while they may not have a disability, can relate to struggle, can relate to overcoming adversity in their life, or certainly facing some sort of challenge. And that human element of having to, or of needing the heart, the perseverance, the resilience to do what these athletes do, is something that we can all learn from and we can all gain something from. And whereas not everybody's going to be an Olympian, you know, or aspire to be, but we can all aspire to have that strength, that fortitude to take a certain challenge, something that, you know, you cannot change about yourself, and say, what are you going to do with it? And that's what's incredible about the Paralympics. And I really believe one day, I think, you know, maybe this is wild, but we're all about being bold and brave here, that I think the Paralympics can surpass the Olympics in popularity. I think there's going to be a future where I really see that, because there's so much more to connect with, to relate with these athletes than able-bodied athletes that are, you know, doing things that none of us will ever achieve to do.
Yeah, I love that. So Scout, you represent some of the biggest brands out there. What does that mean to you for them to have supported you in your journey?
Well, I'm so proud to be partnered with some of these incredible brands, dream brands for me, all companies that I really believe in. But the biggest thing is to align myself with brands that align with my values, what I'm about. And some of that is, you know, the representation aspect of having people with disabilities in sports, women with disabilities, being a minority. There's so many different, I think that's one of the challenges of sort of being in these shoes is, you know, for me, I have a lot of intersectionality points, and it can be a heavy, a load to carry, but one that I'm very proud, because I realize that the opportunity is so unique, but also, as you said earlier, if you can see it, you can be it, and that's what's really important. Working with partners, having opportunities to be in media is so important, because it shows people, it's more visibility of what's possible, and you know, like as you said earlier, I hope that somebody sees, whether it's an ad or a story or this talk, and hears, you know, my journey, and thinks to themselves, well, you know, find some threads to connect with, but also, okay, I've got a little bit of hope to keep going, that I can do those things, that I can be that, and to continue to break those barriers and push the boundaries of what's possible.
And you hit it when you said that, you know, we are both types of, and I think it is that athlete mindset that, you know, talking isn't enough, it's action.
Yes.
And these organizations and brands who've gotten behind you have shown action. And there's still room for more other organizations and brands to show that action through purchasing more adaptive equipment for these athletes, et cetera. Is there, during those challenging times that you have, how do you find that positivity that keeps you going?
Oh, that's a really great question. Well, first I want to add the human element aspect is that I don't wake up every day super motivated, ready, or just excited to, you know, train 5-6 hours. It's not like that. I know people think like, oh, you must never have a down day, or you must always be super excited to do it. And I'm like, no, there's days where I'm just tired, you know, and I am sore, and you know, I wish I didn't have to do that. But it's also such an incredible opportunity. I realize how blessed I am to do something that I love. I mean, to be able to run for a living, to compete, to inspire others, it's hardly a job, you know, and to be able to say that that's what I get to do is such a blessing. But on the days when I struggle and I'm like, oh, I really don't want to do that workout, or just, you know, life struggles, I always think of my why. And I think it's really important for people to know what that is. And for everybody, it's different. It could be your daughter. It could be your partner. It could be for yourself. You know, whatever your why is, it's important to hold on to that, to build your life around that answer. For me, that's what I've tried to do. My why is all the young girls that you know, look up to me, that I'm able to mentor, to teach, to guide, because growing up, I didn't have women like me to model myself after. Nobody to pave the way, showing me how to do this. And I think that if I had had somebody like that, I would have felt a little less alone. I think I would have been a little less fearful of the journey. But, you know, to be that example for them, to show them what's possible, that's my why. And everything that I do, my partnerships, running, the projects, the initiatives, the ways that I want to give back are really centered around that answer. And so I think it's really important when you're struggling to remind yourself of what that answer is and have the courage and the perseverance to build your life around that.
Yeah, and it's one thing I believe in, that maybe because I'm on the other end of my athletic career and moving into this is, and you're doing it now, which is incredible, is you have basically, you are being the person that you needed when you were there in their shoes.
Yeah, and the idea as you are, and all the things that you do is so incredible, but don't wait for somebody to be your hero, to rescue you, to save you. A lot of times you've got to be your own hero, and you've got to be that person that you didn't have, you know, that example that you didn't have, and that role model. And I really love that you just connected that, because it's really important. So many people are just waiting for something to fall into their lap, or for somebody to provide them all the solutions and pave the way and all the opportunities. You got to go out and do it yourself, because if you don't do it, somebody isn't going to do it for you.
Correct. And then hopefully you realize that and then give it back to the next generation so that it's much easier for them, so they can reach different heights.
There are more doors open for them.
Yes. And you had mentioned, we were talking about individuals, and I love the John Wooden quote, right? You're only as good as the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Yes.
And
that's a good one.
Yeah, it is. I know. I'm like, I always
and a
tell
good
people
one
that.
speaking to a UCLA Bruin.
Oh,
we appreciate that.
Of course. I knew that. No, but is there, you know, I always say that, and it always, you know, people immediately are like, shoot, who are my 5 people, right? And I was like, okay, who are, you know, people in your life who help support your environment and allow you to achieve these? Because we see the tip of the iceberg, which is incredible, right? You're in front of us, you're the tip of the iceberg, and it's incredible. We also all do understand that there's so much more underneath the water. So who are some individuals in your life, and how do they help you achieve what you're doing?
I love that you just brought that point, because I think that's a really good teaching and learning lesson too, is that, you know, people always ask how have you been able to do this? And I always say that I would never, everything that I am, everything that I will ever be is because of the people who've lifted me up, you know, who've allowed me to pursue this, to have a sense of belief in me that perhaps at times I didn't even see in myself. And I truly believe who you surround yourself with, who you choose to align yourself with, if you have really good people in your life, you can accomplish and do anything, really. And for me, obviously it starts with my coach. She's an incredible woman. Sheila Burrell, a 2-time Olympian herself in the heptathlon.
Oh, wow.
I only do a couple events. She did 7 at the games. But, you know, she's a very strong Black woman. And I think it's important to align yourself with people who share your message and also your mission. And for me, if I'm about elevating women of color, women that have been marginalized, I want to surround myself with women who are doing that, who have been in those places too, who are showing me how to do that. And I'm so proud that she's been such a great inspiration and example of you know, having to, you know, been told 1,000 no's and yet continuing to push through. So my coach, my team, that's really believed in me. When I started doing this, nobody was interested in partnering with Paralympic athletes. They didn't see the value in that. Why put money? Why put our investment in that? And to be surrounded by a team who saw that need, that belief, it's been so vital for me. But also, you know, of course, my family, my friends, not much has really changed, obviously, like, circumstances have changed, but the same people that were in my life before I had any success are the same people that I hold near and dear to me today and keep me grounded, and that's really important to me to have that. But I really, as much as today we've talked about the success and the highs, I love that you touched on the people in your life, because I would not be where I am today without all the people who've helped me along the way. And not just, the coaches, but there have been so many people along the way that sent a note that I never met or never talked to, and just a word of encouragement. And those things, even the little things, has meant the world to me.
Mm-hmm. As much as you inspire us, I know that little girls out there inspire you to continue to keep doing what you're doing. And you are an incredible individual with brave and boldness that you do. And we continue and hope that you continue to do so on not only this platform, but other platforms. And we will do anything and everything we can to elevate your voice and to uplift it. And although everyone keeps you grounded, we really want you to fly at the same time. So thank you so much for this interview here today and the ability to, ask you some more questions, especially those that allow others to also achieve and follow in your footsteps.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to continue to follow you, to see what's next for you as you're doing some incredible things. And just know that, meeting you today inspires and moves me to continue to push forward.
Yeah, thank you.
I am beyond honored to present this year's Voice and Visibility Women's Courageous Leadership Award to a woman who is an inspiration and a mentor. Each year, the summit honors women in diverse fields who are trailblazing with their efforts, accomplishments, and dedication to their goals. Allow me to share some background about the VVWS 2022 award winner. Throughout Emily's life, she has consistently shown that beneath her sunny disposition and warm heart lies strong perseverance and grit. She was born with a rare chromosome abnormality that left her with a developmental disability conditions including speech impairment, vision impairment, epilepsy, health impairments, sensory processing disorder, cognitive processing delays, and motor challenges. Throughout school, she attended special ed. She was determined to earn a true high school diploma despite pessimistic advice from her high school counselors. She also medaled at the Michigan Special Olympics State Games her junior year. And in high school, she began volunteering weekly with children with physical disabilities. After high school, she was determined to try for a college degree. Emily started working towards an associate's degree in early childhood education in 2014, but had to stop 2 classes short of completion in 2018 due to serious medical events. Determined to regain her strength and resume her life, she not only completed her degree with honors, but she also returned to Sarasota Special Olympics with swim team and made it to the Florida State Games the following year. Throughout this time, Emily has consistently volunteered at Easter Seals Lilly School several days a week as health permitted. She continued to look forward to setting new goals, which include employment, competing in the 100-meter swim level, and living more independently. And I have no doubt that after meeting her today, she will do all of that and more. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I medal this year's VVWS Courageous Leadership Award winner, Miss Emily Paulson. Congratulations. We're so proud of you. These are for her too. Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, congratulations. And we have this for you. We're so excited to see what you'll continue to do, and absolutely just wish you all the very best. And we know that the sky's the limit for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. Next, I'm so pleased to introduce Tom Waters, CEO of Easter Seals, to say a few words about our award winner, Emily, and to share about his work with Easter Seals.
Thank you, Miss Scout. Thank you, Miss Emily. Congratulations on behalf of our entire Easter Seals family. I just want to thank you for being such an amazing representative. Your academic achievement, your athletic achievements, Scout has talked about both of those. I get to see what you do every day in terms of your leadership and mentoring achievements. In that little 2 and 3-year-old room where you're with those kids and you're pouring into them and you're encouraging them and you're helping their ability shine, what a difference you're making at the earliest stages. So I want to say thank you on behalf of our board, the community. You're a courageous leader, but you're also a hometown hero. So on behalf of all of our family, I want to say thanks. And I think we wanted to say thanks to Miss Scout for coming and sharing and medaling you, which is pretty cool to be medaled, okay? And we have a little something special from one of our additional clients and teammates where her abilities got to shine. She's an artist and she does pottery. And so for you, we commissioned her to make a piece, and she is so excited to be able to have me present this to you today. I think you'll note it's as beautiful as you are, and we're thankful for all that you're doing to highlight ability shining, not just here, but nationally and around the world. And I've gotten to know a little bit about your story. You're an amazing woman yourself. So thank you. We appreciate you so much. You're invited back anytime to the art room, to any of our athletic programs, but most importantly, know how much you're appreciated, how proud we are of you. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much. I'm super thrilled to receive this and to be here with both of you. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Oh my gosh. Wow. This is stunning and beautiful. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it. I have zero artistic talent, so this is amazing.
Miss Anna was so excited to do that.
Oh my gosh, absolutely beautiful. This is incredible.
Our pleasure.
Somewhere very special at my place.